Welcome to our 50th anniversary celebration. What were you doing in 1964? I know that our 24 founders were creating a world-class country club.
In the early 1960s, Jim Clay, a graduate of Georgia Tech, a veteran of World War II, and a successful Atlanta business executive, had a dream of bringing the PGA Golf Tour to Atlanta. Jim pulled together 24 of his friends, made them investors, and the rest of the Atlanta Country Club is history.
This club was started when Jim Clay got a gleam in his eye. And we were out here down there in that bottom down there hitting balls. And he got the idea that he wanted to have a world-class golf tournament. And he was a promoter, Jim. Went to the PGA and got this spot. Then we put together the 24 group.
I'm in training camp up in Westminster, Maryland, and I looked over at the sideline during the morning practice, and I saw Jesse Outler, who's the Atlanta Constitution editor, and Jim Clay. And so when we got through practice, we were going up to the locker room, and he came up and said, "I got to talk to you." I said, "Jim, I got to go eat lunch, and I'll be back in my room as soon as that's over with, and just meet me up there in room 306. When I get back to the room, Jim Clay had plats and maps all over the room. He told me about Atlanta Country Club, and he says, "Well, I need some money." I says, "How much you need?" I can't remember what it was. And I wrote him a check, and he was gone. That's how I got in Atlanta Country Club.
Charlie Van Tres called me in 1963 and said, "Jim," he said, "I got something I want to show you." I said, "Sure." We hopped in his airplane, flew over what's now Atlanta Country Club. We landed at Park Air Airport, which is now Kroger, on Johnson's Ferry Road. Hopped in a Jeep, toured the course, and when I got to number 13, I looked at Charlie and I said, "Charlie, I gotta be a member of this club." 2 weeks later at the Dinkler Plaza Hotel, I signed up and was the first name on the list of people that joined.
Well, a friend of mine, Jim Clay, was promoting it up, and he got about 25 people to be sponsors, put up the money to get it built. And I was not one of those, but they got together and appointed me president. My first problem was to hire the pro. I said, "Terry, I need to hire a pro for our new club. And I know you call on all the pros down here, and I want you to tell me who you might recommend." I said, "But I got some criteria." I said, "Number one, he's got to be moral. And we don't want him hustling wives, and there's some that do that, you know." I said, "Number two, he's got to be a pretty good businessman, because they run a shop, and that's just a small business. And number three, we need a good teacher. There's not a good teacher in Atlanta." This was back in the 60s, and most of the pros around were ex-caddies or whatnot. And we needed a little bit of a higher type kind of a guy. And I said, "Number four, he's got to be a good player. He's got to be good enough to beat Charlie Harrison, because he beat all the pros in town." And without hesitating a millisecond, he said, "Well, there's one guy in the Southeast that's head and shoulders above all the rest, and that's Davis Love at Charlotte Country Club." I said, "Well, let's get him on the phone."
I'm very fortunate because I have followed 3 other great golf professionals, obviously with Davis Love Jr., John Gehring, and then obviously Mr. Johnstone. To be here is truly an honor and a privilege.
Well, women started playing right away. Their first play day was 4 days after the men's inaugural play day. December the 5th, I think, 1965. So I don't know what day of the week that was, but it was the ladies' first play day. It was only 4 days after the men. And the Ladies Golf Association was formed that next spring in 1966. Margot Allen. She was an early golfer, early lady golfer, and she came out to the club one day to play golf. and parked her car in the back. This was really early because the parking lot was still gravel, and the parking lot at that time was where the practice putting green is now. And so she parked her car, and one of the caddies came out, and probably before there was any club storage, because her clubs were in the car. So he helped her get her clubs out and put them on a cart, and she was proceeding to get ready to play with her friends, her foursome. And the caddy came running up and said, Miss Allen, your car has rolled down the hill and into the lake on number 1. And she said, so she went in the pro shop and got on the phone and called her husband, Lou, and said, Lou, you're going to have to come over here. The car has rolled into the lake, and I've got a tea time in 10 minutes. I can't be bothered with it.
Well, the anniversary dinners started because the first year nobody was coming to the club to eat, and we needed to get the people to come out here. So my husband was on the board at the time. They were sitting around talking, and someone says, you know, that Jane makes the best sausage and the best spaghetti. I think that they should do a spaghetti dinner and sausage. And Nick said, well, I'll ask her. I thought it was a great idea. We came up with the idea of the first dinner, but then the club's kitchen was not completed. And since I lived out here, Nick said, well, why don't we make it at the house? I said, that's pretty good. So we did, and carried it over here. Carried the whole dinner, everything. The sausage, the spaghetti, the bread, the cheese, the whole works we brought over. It was such a success that they said, hey, well, how about it if we do it one more year? I said, great, we'll do it. And of course, the kitchen was completed, and we were able to do everything here at the club. It was really great. And all year long, we should do it again. We should do it again. Then the next year, we should do it again. And before you know it, it was made a tradition.
We had a member years ago. He's one of our early Yankees. His name was Fred Burns. He came here from Boston. He was a really interesting character. He was really famous for the fact that he prided himself on he had never bought a golf ball, not one. Every time you were playing with him, he'd be out scavenging around trying to find a ball, and his bag was always just full of balls. You get down to number 6 and 7, if he was out of the hole, and likely he would have been, he'd get down in the creek, walk around, get the balls and all that. And so he just never, ever bought a golf ball. He was proud of the fact. Well, one day, he and I and Jim Walsh and somebody else were playing on number 7, which is right along Silk Creek. He and Jim both hit their balls high, long, and left. So we're up looking for him. Fred comes over to Jim. He says, Jim, what number are you playing? He said, Fred, I'm playing a Titleist with my name on it. He said, okay. So a couple minutes later, he said, well, Jim, what number are you playing? He said, Fred, I told you I'm playing a Titleist with my name on it. Fred said, I'm playing a Titleist with your name on it. What number are you playing? So that was Burns.
I joined the club and have been a member for 44 years, and I have played all my golf here at Atlanta Country Club, and it is one heck of a track. In fact, I even sold Larry Nelson his lot on number 18 in 1981.
Actually won the tournament here, the Atlanta Classic, 1980, and so at that time I said, well, it might be nice to go ahead and join. When I won here in '80, I didn't live here, but it was certainly nice winning the Atlanta Classic here in 1988. I could receive the trophy and I could actually carry it back to my house, which was about 150 yards down the 18th fairway. I really wanted Pap, who was the caddy master here, to caddy for me that week, and he was all excited about it. He said, yes, sir, I'd love to caddy for you. And so we got off to just a really good start. We actually, I think, going into the last day, probably had a 3-shot lead or something like that. And so he was all excited. And I can remember walking around the golf course and all the people were saying, go Pap. You know, they didn't care about me. They didn't care about me playing out there. It was all about him. I ended up winning the tournament, but probably the biggest thing was just seeing how much Pap actually enjoyed that.
The tennis story goes back to the beginning of the club when we did not have tennis courts, but we had an arrangement with the Chattahoochee Plantation Club to use their tennis courts and even their pool. But in 1971, our board of directors, in a very wise decision, approved the construction of 3 tennis courts. And John Hankey was the first pro we brought in, and we were on our way to building up a juniors program and a tennis program for the whole club.
I came here in 1972, and Ray Monahan, who was the selection committee, told me later on that I was selected because I lived in town and they didn't have to pay my moving expenses. The club was back then like we were broke as a church mouse. I was a general manager. Actually, I was hired as a title, but I was a cook, a dishwasher, a bowl washer. I have to do a lot of things because we just didn't have the money to do it. It was always challenging, always rewarding.
The journey, I didn't start in the barn. Thank goodness. There were several superintendents before me. It all started with Jim Shirley during construction, and George Bergen was behind him, and then Dick Schultz. And Dick Schultz was instrumental in moving us out of the barn down on number 4 up to the new facility up here by 18.
We had a clubhouse that was built for the needs of the Atlanta Classic, and it was very dysfunctional, and nobody liked it. And so the decision was made, were we going to remodel the old clubhouse or build a new clubhouse? And we had a series of spirited town hall meetings and had call-in security to keep order. And we also thought not serving alcohol would be appropriate, but then we probably wouldn't have never had a quorum. So finally we decided that the vote was fairly unanimous that we build a new clubhouse. The result is the clubhouse that we have today.
We have a letter here from Tom Cousins that I'd like to read. I wish that I could be with all of you to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Atlanta Country Club. Please accept this letter as my expression of congratulations of this special occasion. Back in the 1960s, a group of us who played golf on Saturdays at Capital City Club began to talk together about an idea that just came upon us. Recognizing that Capital City was struggling in some ways and that Peachtree was doing better, but not for everybody, our group envisioned starting a new golf club, one that appreciated its members, could provide a first-rate course and facility, and might also be able to host a major PGA tournament. Not long after, we found the land, laid out the game plan, and moved forward, including starting the Atlanta Classic, which became a big event for our city and entire region. Looking back, those founders who are still alive and perhaps still playing a few rounds now and then can say without a doubt that we did good. And for those who have gone on through their eternal reward, I think they might be smiling upon us from above, saying, keep your heads down and press on. With all that said, I wish you well on this 50th anniversary of Atlanta Country Club, and hope that the next 50 years will be just as grand and glorious as the past half century that we all have enjoyed together. Sincerely, Tom Cousins.
Our 50-year anniversary, this is a fantastic time to look back at what the leadership of our club did to set standards and set the characteristics of what made our club one of the greatest in America. I want to challenge all current board members, all future board members, and any future person in leadership of our club that you move forward with the leadership and ideas that not only keeps our club the best in Atlanta, but one of the greatest clubs in the country.
I can't imagine not being here. I can't imagine. It has been a huge part of my life, and I love it.
I don't believe it's been 50 years. I think that's a typo someplace.
All I can say really is just thank you.
Atlanta Country Club, I'm proud of you. Happy anniversary.
All the best for the next 50.
Giorno! Happy anniversary!
These first 50 years have been very exciting, and now let's see what happens the next 50 years.
I ain't working on the 100-year version.